Hello everyone, welcome to Music, Motorcycles and Ministry. Hope everyone's doing well. Today we're going to talk about end time prophecy. We're going to start basic. A good starting point is in the book of Daniel. Now in the book of Daniel there's this king, his name is Nebuchadnezzar. He had this terrifying dream. So he asked all his wise men to come and interpret the dream for him. So all the wise men came and they said, "Okay, king, tell us the dream and then we'll interpret it for you." And the king was like, "Not so fast. I want to make sure you really can interpret this dream. So you tell me what I dreamed and then tell me the interpretation and then I'll believe you." And the wise men were like, "Well, that's kind of hard to do. You need to tell us a dream." And the king says, "No way. If you don't tell me the dream, you're all going to be put to death." So they couldn't tell him the dream, so he ordered all the wise men to be put to death. But there was a few wise men that were missing, and one of them was Daniel. So the soldiers went out to look for Daniel because he was going to be put to death too, along with his three friends, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. They were all going to be put to death. But then Daniel says, hey, why be so hasty about this? Why don't you let me try to interpret the dream first? So they brought him to the king, and the king says, "Okay, Daniel, you try to interpret the dream for me. But you need to also tell me what the dream was before you interpret it." So Daniel says, "Well, let me pray to God, and God will show me the dream and the interpretation, and then I will interpret it for you." So Daniel prayed, and God showed him the dream and the interpretation. So the dream was, Nebuchadnezzar dreamed of this huge statue. So a terrifying statue. It had a head of gold, it had a chest of silver, it had loins of brass, it had legs of iron, and the feet were partly iron and partly clay. He also seen this big rock that was carved out by no human hand, and it came falling from the sky and crashed into his feet. And then when it hit the feet shattered and the whole statue fell over and shattered also. Daniel said, "This is the interpretation. The head of gold, Nebuchadnezzar, is you and your kingdom. But," he said, "there's going to be another kingdom that is going to take over, and that was represented by the chest of silver. And then after that, another kingdom, which was the loins, which were of brass. Then after that, the legs of iron. And then after that, it was the feet of iron and clay." Nebuchadnezzar believed Daniel because Daniel knew the dream and the interpretation, and he rewarded Daniel and made him very high up in his kingdom. But later on, if you look through history, it happened exactly as Daniel had interpreted. After Babylon came the Medes and the Persians. They took over Babylon. That's a whole story in itself. Someday we'll get into that too. But they took over Babylon. They were the chest of silver. After that, the loins of brass were Greece with Alexander the Great. They took after that, and they controlled pretty much the whole known world at that point. Then after that, Rome came. They were the legs of iron. Then after that, there were the feet of clay and iron. And that wasn't yet described in the Bible what kingdom that was. It is a kingdom that's near the end when Jesus comes back, because the rock was also interpreted by Daniel to be God's kingdom that would smash the statue and take over the whole world. Okay, so the feet are at the time of the end, when God's kingdom, when Jesus finally comes and takes over the whole world. There's been a lot of speculation what the 10 kings were, 10 kingdoms. Isaac Newton, he had a lot of predictions about the end times. Very intelligent brother. He even made a prophecy that said that the end of the world would not come at least until 2060. He said he didn't He didn't say it would come at 2060, he said it wouldn't come at least until 2060. He says that he didn't want to set dates or anything, he just was tired of people always predicting the end of the world and then it'd pass, and then Christianity would get a bad name for predicting it wrong all the time. He says, so he wanted to make this prediction to show that it probably won't happen till at least 2060. Another person that kind of predicted the end was Hal Lindsey. They both had commentaries, Isaac Newton and Hal Lindsey, on what the 10 nations were, or what they thought they were. Sorry, Brother Isaac, I think you're a little ahead of your time. He did predict some kind of close things. He thought that the 10 kingdoms were all the kingdoms that pretty much contributed to the downfall of Rome, which were the Goths, the Visigoths, the Vandals, Huns. So he had a list of 10 countries he thought were the 10 kingdoms. But, you know, he did a pretty good job, because some of those kingdoms turned out to be kingdoms that are still in existence today, that transformed into the kingdoms today. So he did a pretty good job for being that far back in time. Most prophecy isn't very clear until it happens. So then, Hal Lindsey thought it was the 10 European economic community that was developing. But that ended up being more than 10 nations after a while. And nations would drop and come back in, like the UK got out of it a couple years ago. So that was kind of not an accurate guess either. But maybe, this is just speculation also, but could it be that the kingdoms that were in power after the fall of Rome, that are still in power today, could be those 10 kingdoms? In Daniel said that the feet, the last kingdom, the 10 toes represented the 10 kingdoms at the end. And they were partly clay and partly iron, and it was a divided kingdom. And if you think about it, today, some of those kingdoms, since Rome, have developed into superpowers that are still existent today, maybe not as powerful, but then there are some new ones. And my guess is, and this is just speculation, I might not have all the countries right or whatever, but I'm thinking, okay, France, England, Spain, okay, America, Russia, China, Germany, Japan, Italy, those were all superpowers at one time or another, and they are still in existence today, and they're still kind of ruling the world all together as a bunch of nations. They're divided, especially Russia and China and America, they're all divided, but they still are pretty much the superpowers of the world. Now I'm missing one. I've talked to some brothers about them, and they were thinking maybe Israel, it might be in there. So I'm not sure about all those 10, but I do know that, for instance, when Isaac Newton predicting this stuff, you know, America was not a superpower yet. Russia was not a superpower yet. China, you know, a lot of these nations weren't a superpower yet, so he couldn't really have predicted it that accurately. But today, I mean, we should be able to tell that, you know, these 9 nations that I named were pretty much undeniably a superpower at one time or another, and they're still in the world as a power today to some extent or another. So I mean, that could be possible that we're either waiting for one a more, or maybe a couple of them that I didn't get right. Maybe there's other ones we're waiting for, but it's pretty close to 10 nations now, if not even 10. So I mean, it could be very close, so be ready. Tell me what you think in the comments. You think I'm on base to something? Because this is just speculation. I'm not saying it's accurate. I'm just saying these are some thoughts I've had. That's it for this edition of Music, Motorcycles, and Ministry. If this was interesting to you, check out some of the other videos on this channel. Subscribe if you want. Hit the notify button. And until next time, God bless you.